Hello, I'm Mr. Clix, and this is Mr. Clix Flix. And today is our first episode of Heroclix 101, where I'm going to explain Heroclix basics to hopefully new players or have a nice rehash for some older players. So I guess the best place to start would be the starting areas. So let's go ahead and have a look. The map I picked to do this demonstration on is the Infinity Gauntlet Month 1 Soul World Outdoor Map. I picked it because it has a little bit of every style of terrain, so it's a nice teaching tool. Every starting area on every Heroclix map is designated with a purple outline. Every map has them. Every map has at least 2 of them, and that's where you put your Heroclix force to start the game. Now sometimes if you get a colossal figure, they won't exactly fit inside the starting area, but you're supposed to make them fit as close as you can. On the other side of the map, in the other starting area, I have my convention exclusive Giant Man, and you can see he's a little bit bigger base, but he still fits inside of the starting area. And next to Giant Man, you'll see Atuma from Fear Itself, and he is in water terrain, and water terrain is designated as being outlined in blue. And what it is whenever you move through water terrain, unless you have the dolphin symbol, which Atuma has, or the flight symbol, you have to have your movement. So if you had a 10 movement with the boot symbol and power that didn't make it so that you could ignore it, but we'll get to that stuff later. Let's just say you had a 10 movement with the boot symbol, you would only be able to move 5 squares. But here's the catch: whenever you first move into water terrain, you have to stop as soon as you get inside of that square. So as soon as somebody moves in it with a 10 movement, they only move 1 space into the water terrain, they stop right there. Their next turn they can only move 5 squares. So it's really good terrain for water types or flyer types, but not so much for everybody else where you have to have your movement. Now the next type of terrain we're going to talk about is right here, where we have Hulkbuster Iron Man and the Hulk duking it out. And it is hindering terrain, and hindering terrain is designated by a green outline. And hindering terrain is very similar to water terrain, and as a matter of fact in the rule book, watering terrain is hindering terrain for movement purposes. But hindering terrain does the same thing, where as soon as you move in it, unless you're a flyer or have a special power, it's not like the water where you can have the dolphin symbol also. You either have to have the flight ability or have a special power that says you can move through hindering terrain. You stop as soon as you get into it, and you have your movement while you move through it. So again, that 10 movement, you move 1 square to get in there, that's all you get. Next turn you only get 5 squares. And also something about hindering terrain is if somebody tries to range attack your character while you're in hindering terrain, you get a +1 to your defensive value. So let's say that there's this Hulk here, and he has a 18 range, or 18 defense, I'm sorry. And we'll just say that Green Goblin over there on the other side it's fighting Spider-Man, has enough range to get to Hulk. Whenever he attacks Hulk, the Hulk would now have, instead of an 18 defense, he would have a 19 defense to make him even that much harder to hit at range. But if Hulkbuster Iron Man tries to attack him, he still only gets the 18 defense that he would regularly have, because Hulkbuster Iron Man is making a close combat attack. Alright, the next type of terrain is called blocking terrain, and it's right here with my Fear Itself Colossus and Kurth. It's designated with a brown outline. Okay, and what it does is, unless you're a flyer or have a special ability, you have to move around it. And also, it blocks lines of fire. So if Hulkbuster Iron Man tried to attack Colossus with a range attack, he wouldn't be able to see him because of this blocking terrain. So he would have to move around to where he'd be able to see him. Alright, and the same thing with close combat attacks. Kurth would have to be right next to him to be able to attack him. This is blocking his movement. So that's how that how that map coloration works. It blocks everything, blocks line of fire, blocks movement, unless you're a flyer. And there's also indoor blocking terrain, which is also designated with the blocking with the brown outline. And if you're a flyer and you're in the blocking terrain on the inside, you can't move through that. You have to go around it. And the last type of terrain is elevated terrain. And it is designated by a red color, as you can see, that outlines the area that Spider-Man and Green Goblin are fighting in. And what that means is that it is above the place that's beside it. So if you'll notice, let's see if there's a place a little bit closer. There's these arrows, and these say 1 and 2. So this is the lowest level, 1, and 2 is the next level higher. And there's some maps that even have level 3, but I figured for teaching we'll just do level 1 and level 2. Alright, so what that means is if you have a character here and a character here, they can't attack each other even though they're next to one another because they're at different elevation levels. Now if you have a flyer, you can just move right up onto elevation and not have a problem, right? Because you're flying. Or some people that have a special power that say they can do that can do it also. What you normally have to do is you look for these arrows that are on the newer maps, and that is the place where you can go. Sometimes there'll be a picture of a ladder or something. This one is just like green for a like the hillside sloping up. So that would be how you have to get up there. And also over here has a set of arrows too. So that's the only ways to get up there. Now if you're up here and you just have a standard boot symbol and you jump down, you actually end up hurting yourself and you have to take 2 clicks of damage. So something to keep in mind if you get trapped. Yeah, you can jump off, but you take your 2 clicks of damage. So that's all I have for you today for the first episode of Heroclix 101. So just a quick rehash of the different terrains. Alright, purple is your starting area where you set up your force. Purple outline. The next thing is hindering terrain. It's got a green outline. You have to have your movement through it, and you have to stop as soon as you get into it. And it also adds +1 to your defense when being attacked by a ranged combatant. And water terrain, which is the blue outline, is considered hindering terrain for movement purposes. So you stop as soon as you get into it, and you have your movement while you're in it or moving through it, unless you have the wing symbol or the dolphin symbol in the case of water. And lastly, or not lastly, but next is elevated terrain, designated by a red outline. We'll always have on the newer maps a set of arrows designating which level it goes to. In this case over here, it says level 1 to level 2. You have to go up through where the arrows are unless you're a flyer. And when you get down from there, if you don't go through where the arrows are and you're not a flyer, you take 2 clicks of damage. And the last type of terrain is blocking terrain, which blocks line of sight for ranged attacks and also blocks movement. So if you're not a flyer, you have to move around it. You can't just run over it unless you have a special power. So that's all I have for you on the first episode of Heroclix 101. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check back later. Hopefully I'll have some Fear Itself figure reviews, and then maybe another episode of Heroclix 101 where we'll discuss the actual Heroclix styles. Thanks very much. Bye.